Hey Jérôme, hey Raman.
Hey,
Hello.
hi guys. It's really nice to see you here. Let me start just with a short question and a fact I just learned. Like before the talk, we had a moment to talk with Jerome, and I found out that actually Andrei just mentioned that we have plenty of solutions for cross-platform UI, but I just found out that Una platform happens to be one of the oldest of them. We may not know it because it happened to be open source just like 3 years ago, but it started to at 2014, like this.
Yeah, 2013, yes.
Yeah, and it was quite surprising for me. So how come? Why you started developing cross-platform stuff that early?
Yeah, well, it's all about making sure that Inventive was the company that I worked with and worked for, and that is part of the Uno platform. We started developing application for Windows at the time, and a customer said, "Well, do you know how to do iOS and Android as well?" And we started to say, "Well, why not try to take all the things that we know about XAML and put that over to the other platforms?" Mm-hmm. And Xamarin was there at the time, so we tried and. It went over to the Uno platform. So that's how we went there. It's all about reusing skills. So.
And was it complicated to make the thing? I mean, actually, like 7 years ago, it was.
Oh yeah, it was. It was. That's for sure. I mean, it was the beginnings of Xamarin. So it actually was not called Xamarin at the time. I think it was Simian at the time. It was founded by Miguel de Casa, and it was called Monodroid and Monotouch at the time. So it was the very, very beginning.
So yeah, that's crazy because I had no idea that at that time there was cross-platform solutions. Just no idea. I mean, of that scale. So it's really interesting now to hear what you have to tell us about it. So I guess we could just start.
Yeah, of course. So I'll probably just show my screen. So my name is Jérôme Laban. I'm the CTO of the Uno platform open source project. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm available there. And I'm from Montreal, so I've been working for the Uno platform for the past I think it was 7-8 years now. So it's been a while. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm going to explain to you what that means and why we're doing this, what that entails, different technical challenges and solutions that we're bringing to the table. So the problem is, pretty simple in some sense, and actually quite complex when you're thinking about it. But the problem is that cross-platform development is pretty complicated, and the number of targets that are available across the board is pretty large, and I wouldn't say it's growing per the year, but with the new operating system coming up, and it's getting difficult to target everything. So pretty much you have efforts applications. So if you're making a Windows app or macOS app, Linux, iOS, Tizen, and even Fuchsia that comes up in the future, it's all about effort application. So cross-platform development is some kind of a holy grail that people have been talking for a while, and there are different solutions that are available, and with regards to the .NET ecosystem, it's people have been developing for .NET for the past 20 years. I think 20 years is coming up. Pretty soon, Microsoft is going to be doing something about it. And the thing is that legacy applications have been there for quite a while, and you have people that have been developing their applications for the past 10 years or so, and they have lots of investment in WPF or in Silverlight or even UWP, and just plain C#. And that plain C# has been there, and rewriting that to the other ecosystem means just time spent developing those, but you have duplication of bugs and missing features and all that kind of things that may happen because you may have a problem with skills and training and developer availability. So if you want to develop for macOS, iOS, or others, you have to have a specific set of developers that do that. And they may have different experience levels and understanding of your application domain and things like that. So that's the biggest. It's a big problem. And our solution is to basically go to to implement something that uses WinUI and the Uno platform to combine all this and .NET to target all those platforms. So we're talking desktop, web, mobile, dual screen devices, Android devices, even consoles in a sense, because Windows targets consoles as well, and IoT devices as well. So .NET is doing all this, and when adding Uno to the mix, the idea is to augment the number of targets that are available for developers using XAML and C#. And it's about deploying to every platform. So you write it once, you reuse your skills across platform, and you worry less about what's underneath for the developers there. So for the platforms there. So what we've been doing is we started in 2013. It was a private version, closed source, and we developed all this along the years. And we open sourced in 2018 with the introduction of WebAssembly. And I'm going to be talking about WebAssembly a bit later on during the talk, because it's kind of a hot topic lately. So a lot of people have been asking about that. And then we started adding lots of things. And the reason we open sourced is basically because it was too interesting for to keep it to ourselves and have the community contribute and use all this, because we couldn't have that as a hidden gem. So and we started adding lots of support, like Entity Framework, Community Toolkit, full AOT for WebAssembly. We had hot reload, Syncfusion, WebAssembly, migration to Windows 7. That's the kind of things that we've been doing. And we've been adding features and talking about Xbind, Android X, macOS. And we introduced Linux support recently, as well as .NET 5 for WebAssembly, and moving very quickly to add lots of new features. And we have a new release that's coming up in the next week or so. That's going to add a slew of other features. So we're adding momentum and adding lots of features per year for that. So how are we doing this? It's basically about having WinUI, which is the XAML and UI language from Microsoft that they're pushing for newer applications, and making that running everywhere. So pixel perfect, single code base, having that can run anywhere .NET runs. And with a third-party ecosystem that already exists, we don't have to bootstrap anything because it's already available. And it's free and open source, so it's using the Apache 2 license. So there's nothing that you need to worry about. And the way we're implementing this is basically having C#, XAML, and .NET that are available across platform, and then we're hiding the implementation details for each individual platform behind the APIs that WinUI and WinRT are providing. So I'm going to detail a bit what that means afterwards. So depending on each platforms, I'm going to detail the ways we're rendering things, but that's the idea. You're developing your application. You're developing your application only once, and then Uno is taking care of the rest where applicable. So it's truly native. It's not something that we're just bolting on top. The idea behind this is that if you're running on top of WinUI, Uno doesn't exist at all. It's just Windows running there, and you don't need to do anything. If you're running on iOS, macOS, Android, HTML, and others, we're just sitting on top. So when we're talking truly native on UI, we're actually using UIKit, and we're using the layer that Xamarin provides. That is called the binding, that just translate the calls from C# from C# to Objective-C and others, but propagates the applications, just propagates the calls up to your C#. So it's not an entirely different language. It's just the same APIs that can be used from the native platform you can use from C#, but it's an actually truly native application. So for HTML, we're using HTML5 to render the contents, and same thing for iOS, Android, and macOS. And on Skia, we're actually using Skia for Linux mainly, but it also allows to run on let's say Tizen and other targets, or Windows 7 for that matter. And we're rendering all the controls using the Skia API. So for those who don't know, Skia is the library that's used by Google. That's actually developed by Google to render the content of Chrome itself. So it's actually quite powerful. It does lots of things. It has hardware accelerated features to render content, so it's pretty efficient. And we're using this library to render the content of Uno for those platforms specifically. So about licensing and sustainability, how are we working there? So Uno platform is free. It's open source. It's using the Apache 2 license, but it's sustained through the Red Hat model. So what we're doing is basically how our customers are they're contributing to, so when they're hiring us, they're basically helping to adjust the backlog. So if they have a feature that's missing in Uno, or a bug or something like that, then they can ask us to fix those things and move their issues up to the top of the list, so it goes faster for them. That's the idea of the model for us. So now, when we're talking about rendering things and how are we rendering things? So there are multiple ways to do UI rendering, and there's on the far left, we're going to find canvas rendering. So canvas rendering is something that Aurelien and Flutter have been doing. It's basically the application controls every pixel. So that means that when you're rendering a text box, or rendering a text block, or you're rendering anything that is interrupt with the system, then the framework is handling everything manually. So that means that you have the control over everything that's rendered on any platform. So it's going to look exactly the same on all platforms. It has disadvantages, like the fact that if you want to use IAME, for instance, so let's say if you right-click on the text box, or some selected text, then there's a pop-up that shows up. That pop-up is something that needs to be aligned with the system. So if you're rendering everything by yourself, it becomes a bit more complicated to do and follow what the system is providing. So if there's an update to the system, if you have to re-render everything that the system provides, it can be difficult to follow. And in some cases, it may be just impossible. On iOS and Android, some of the APIs are just completely hidden, and you have to use the native controls to do that. And now on the far right of that screen, you have the native rendering, and that native rendering is all about it's what React Native and Xamarin Forms, and ultimately some parts of Maui are using the native controls to render the UI. So you have limited control over what the UI shows. It has to be, so if you're making a button or you're making any kind of slider, checkbox, or anything like that, then the content visually is going to look differently on all platforms, but it's going to look familiar to the user on each and individual platform. That has advantages of the fact that if you want to follow what the system provides, it's going to be exactly what the system provides. And if there are updates to the system, it's gonna go up. But the problem is that approach is that while you have the system controls everything visually, or most of everything visually, then that means that if you have designers that are picky, then it becomes complicated for them to be able to have something that looks consistent across platforms. So that's where we're with Uno providing the pixel perfect and access to native behaviors, accessibility, and GPU acceleration for everything, using lookless control templating. What we're calling by that is, when you're making a button, when you're adding a button to your UI, that button is basically something that doesn't have anything into it. It has the behavior, so when you click on it, it has to do something. But the way it looks is something that you define, and that's what Microsoft has been doing from the beginning, using WPF, is about defining what that button is going to look like. So with Uno, you can choose. You can either render the whole thing with your design styles, or you can use native rendering as well by reusing the native controls. So that's something that you can choose, and when developing an Uno application, you're not stuck into one mode. And you can actually go into some details of, you can choose on the same page to have a native button if you want, and a completely custom button. If you want to have a button with a video inside, that's something that you can do. So what that means in terms of rendering specifically, I have if you're familiar with XAML, it's going to be something that looks interesting. Is that you have a grid with a white background and a padding around, and a text block plus a slider, and that slider is going to look like this on all those platforms. So it's going to look very similar. It's actually similar with regards to the different fonts and zooming that may happen on different platforms. But that's what it looks like. So that's all the platforms that are available there, and the application is going to look the same on all platforms. And if you want to have a slider that looks different, you can do that as well by altering that, or use the native style if you want. So with regards to XAML support, we're talking about control templating, data templating, styling, theming, conditional XAML, the native control integration. So that one is interesting, and it's something that is quite difficult when you're using something that is using canvas rendering. Let's say if you want to integrate a web browser or maps control, or any kind of ad control, if you have an application that uses ads to monetize, that's something that may be difficult to do. But with the fact that we can integrate all those controls natively on some platforms, so iOS, Android, macOS, and the web as well, that means that you can integrate those controls without any problem. It works pretty well. We have animations, data binding, shapes and brushes. You can check more about that. So we have an application that's called the gallery, which actually I can actually show you right now. So the Uno Gallery is an application that we have on the web that shows all the features, some of the features that the applications that the Uno platform is providing. So this is that kind of things that we have. So for instance, we have a button and a way to have filled items and checkboxes and others, and you can see those with the fluent style and material style. So that's a way to take a look at how the application is behaving. So you can go to that application. We're going to be updating that very soon with a different set of controls that show a different set of other things. But we have buttons and other things that are available directly as part of that, or other features like acrylic, for instance, that people have been asking for quite a while. So to get nice looking application that are showing those new design trends that use transparent and blurry backgrounds. So all those kind of things that you can do with your application, you can validate and take a look for yourself using this application. So that's about the gallery application. So if we go a bit forward, in terms of coverage, that's something that's very interesting. So we started off with a few of those. And Uno is basically a reimplementation of WinUI and WinRT. And when we say reimplementation, it's not just we're inventing everything. We are also porting the code that comes from the actual WinUI, the actual WinUI library that Microsoft has been open sourcing, and we're porting those over to Uno. So that means that the behavior is exactly the same, down to the bugs that have been available there. And we've been porting a set of controls from WinUI, and we were debugging that control, and while integrating that control, we found out that there was a weird issue that happened, and we went back to the original repo and found out that newer commits have been pushed that fixed the bug that we found out in Uno, which were not bugs coming from Uno, but were coming from that control that we ported over. So that's the kind of things that we're doing. So all those controls are available, and it gives you an idea of the depth of that, and we're progressing and adding more controls by the day. So that's the kind of coverage that we're getting there. Another part that's interesting when we're developing applications is all about localization and images. You add your assets only once. We're developing an application using Uno. And you don't have to, basically for adding a scale assets for iOS, Android, and others, where you have to have if you're doing iOS development, you're going to see X3 for very high resolution Retina displays. That's the kind of things that you need to do per platform when developing independently. So with Uno, there's things like that are handled manually. You don't have to handle manually. There's also a localization. So localization is one interesting thing. It's you only do your localized strings only once, and that happens to provide you access to a very large set of localization. And I'm going to show you one application that we did that we ported a while back, which is the Uno calculator. And it's going to look familiar. That application is actually a WebAssembly application that we developed and ported over to Uno using WebAssembly. And that application is the actual Windows calculator. So if I launch the Windows calculator, you're going to see that's the Windows calculator running the original one, and that's the one that's running on the web. And we ported that application over to the web using Uno. So we took the code that Microsoft has been open sourcing. I think it was 2.5 years ago now, and we translated that over to C# and took one part of the code that's running actually inside of the original calculator application, which is a piece of C++ code that dates back from 1993. It's pretty old, and it actually runs in the browser now. So we've recompiled that and makes it run. And that application is the actual Windows calculator that runs on your device. So if you're running now and you're in Russia and your system is in Russian, then the application is actually going to show up using a Russian translation. It's available also for iOS and Android and even Linux in other. For that, and it's basically the same application that you can see. It is translated there. So we took the localized resources for 60 languages, and that makes it available for all the targets that Microsoft had originally for their application. So that's pretty cool. So that's it for localization and images. So now, another thing that we've been doing, and a lot of people have been asking for this, is it's theming. And having different themes is quite important depending on the target. So you may be an iOS developer, and your designers like the Cupertino style, and if you want to run that on the web, that's something that you can do. So you can take that Cupertino style and apply that to your application and make it available for all those different targets. Same thing for Material or Fluent if you want to reuse those styles. And it's something that we're providing out of the box. So you just need to install a NuGet package that provides all those styles, just a bit of setup, and then your application is going to be having those different themes available right away. So that's pretty nice. So the Fluent style is coming actually from Microsoft directly. That's something that's pretty interesting. So another thing, so the Uno gallery that I just talked about, so it's available on multiple platforms. You can actually install it on your phone as well, and so take a look at what the Uno platform is able to provide. So you go to platform.uno/gallery, and you're going to be able to install that on your phone or see that on your web browser and experience what Uno is able to provide. We're continually upgrading that application and adding new features and performance improvements, bug fixes, and things like that. So come back often if you want to see where that goes. So we're also supporting lots of animations. I'm not going to let that running. So that's pretty interesting. And with all those animations available, you can do the same with your application. So those are examples of what is able to be provided. Another thing that is available is, and one of the reasons we did this originally is the Uno platform is all about re-implementing the WinUI and WinRT APIs. So what that means is that an application that has been developed for UWP or WinUI is able to be recompiled on top of Uno. And that means that of course, WinUI itself, because it uses WinUI, so it uses WinUI controls and WinUI idioms. So that's the kind of things that we can reuse. But there's also Prism and Community Toolkit and Reactive UI and MVVM Lights and support for others. Infrastructure and Syncfusion also have been adding their own controls on top of that, and I'm going to be showing you demos about that. But the idea is that because the API set is the same across platform, we're not kickstarting a new ecosystem. It's just the existing one with the existing code, albeit the fact that you need to recompile on top of Uno, but that's pretty much the only thing that needs to be done. And you can reuse all those controls on top of Uno. And we're talking about net standard 2 libraries. Those net standard 2 libraries can be reused across platform without any modification. So if you have, let's say, JSON.NET or anything like that, that works on iOS, Android, and WebAssembly specifically. So that's one of the interests that makes pretty nice. So there you have it. It's just about supporting all those controls and not bootstrapping. You reuse what you have already. And if you have WinUI code, or even to some extent WPF or Silverlight code, and we have a migration documentation for that, it's possible to reuse all that code and makes it run across platforms. We've been at it for a while, so we have quite a few customers that are using those applications developed on top of Uno. So it's not just about is Uno going to stay there? We have a hand there. We have a stake into making Uno stay alive and keep active and keep being active, so that it keeps running and stays viable along the way, because we have customers from the Inventive company, which is the parent company for Uno platform, that uses the Uno platform for those applications. So it's going to stay. And if all those customers are quite happy with the application running using cross-platform tech that way. Another thing that we're providing as part of the Uno platform is UI testing. So it's very important. It's something that people, especially when we're developing cross-platform, we're talking about developing one UI test for all the platforms that are available. So for now, we're doing iOS, Android, and WebAssembly. And we're going to be adding support for additional platforms pretty soon, because it's something that allows us to self-test the Uno platform on itself. So this is a test that's been available that Uno uses for itself to validate some of the concerns. So it's a very important part of the development process that we are taking care of by providing UI testing. We're also providing C# support for WebAssembly. That's another one that's pretty interesting. And I'm actually going to show you that one. So C# is one of the more recent additions to this. And so if I have that application, let me just show you that. I thought that I had that opened. So this is an application that runs in your browser. And C# is actually running directly inside of the browser, and that's something that basically you can click there, and all those samples are coming from the actual C# library that's been developed by Microsoft. So C# is a binding on top of Skia. So basically, if you have a control that needs to render anything that's by the pixel, that's something that you can reuse cross-platform pretty easily. So this is the kind of things that shows you that. So to show you that it's actually not rendering by images. So if I resize the image like this, you're going to see that the pixels are actually moving. So you can see that the nose is moving away when I resize the screen. So this is using software rendering, and we've recently added and in collaboration with Microsoft, hardware rendering using WebGL. So in the browser, it's gonna go a lot faster. So we're going to be updating that soon. That's going to be pretty nice for people that are developing applications that use a C#. So now going back to the slide. So other component vendor have been taking a look at implementing things for implementing controls on top of Uno. This is Infragistics. We have a blog post that details that, and they are always eager to find out about what's happening with your use cases. So if there's something that's needed there, so please take a look. And if there's something that you have a vested interest in, let them know. They're always happy to understand that. And Brad Lagudas, that's working on, which is working on this. Who's working on this? Sorry, is always interested to know about feedback that you may have. Another one that has been interesting, and if you want to test out right away, and right now you want to test out, there's the Uno Playground. I'm going to show you that one real quick. It is an application that allows you to test the Uno platform directly in your browser. So basically, you have a Monaco editor here that allows you to see your XAML, and when you're changing the content here, it just updates right away there. So if I change, for instance, this to be very, very large, you can see that the text just updated right away. So it re-rendered the content here, and you can also do data binding. So if you change the content there, you can take a look here at the bottom. If I change the content here, it updates right away because the data context that I'm changing is data binding that content here directly in the browser without having anything to run on the other end. So that's one of the different things that have been running. It's pretty nice to see that you can test that out. And we have bug reports that are provided to the Uno platform through this, and people are creating and showing snippets of code that they have on there, and having to being able to test all this on their browser. So just so you know, you can use the platform, the Playground, the platform, the Uno, to test out your XAML directly on your browser without having to test anything locally. So there's that. So let's go back to slides again. I think that's pretty much it. So let's go dive into some code. So I'm going to show you now what that means about developing the Uno platform. So the basic experience comes with installing a Visual Studio add-in that you can search for the Manage extension here. And so that's our main development platform, but we're expanding to others. If you're interested in, let's say, for instance, Writer and Visual Studio Code, that's something that's evolving quite a bit as well. So for now, it's mostly Visual Studio, but that's going to change. You can use Visual Studio Code right away. It's something that works, but we're integrating more things to Visual Studio Code and other targets pretty soon. So once you've installed this, it provides you with a set of templates. So when you create a fine new project, you're going to get a set of targets here. So if you search for Uno, you're going to get 2 sets of templates that are going to appear soon. My Visual Studio is showing that one up some time. You get 2 sets of templates. Okay. Let's see if Visual Studio wants to show me that. There it is. So you get cross-platform app, which is providing you with a set of all targets that are available. So iOS, macOS, Android, Tizen, web, and others, and Windows, and a way to do cross-platform libraries. So if you're creating an application that let's say has reusable components, you create a custom control that you want to reuse across applications. That's one way to do it. You can use a cross-platform library. So I'm not going to create that. I've created the application already. So this is an application that has been created for this demo that shows a little bit things. So what we can see here, I'm not going to zoom in because I'm not sure if it's going to behave properly. But the idea is that you have 2 sets of projects. You have the platforms project, so that gives you all the heads, so Droid, iOS, macOS, GTK, Tizen, WPF, UWP, and WebAssembly. So those are the targets that Uno uses at this point and for which you can develop applications for. And the idea behind all this, and mind you, this is going to change. That list is going to reduce dramatically using .NET 6 that's coming up until the end of this year. But for now, we have to deal with multiple targets. And those projects are pretty much empty. They have platform-specific resources like the entry point, and let's say for iOS, you have the plist files and entitlements files and some resources that are available for those targets, but it's pretty much empty. So same goes for macOS. You can see the plist and main file. So if I open that one, you just have the initialization of the app, and the rest is going to be located into a shared project. People have been asking us about that shared project stuff, and there are very strong opinions about the use of shared project. The main reason for this is because of a limitation of Visual Studio, that if you're making cross-platform library instead of a shared project, for now, that's going to change in the future. But if you're making a cross-platform library, then if you're multi-targeting and you have, let's say, 7 targets in it, for now, Visual Studio, even if you compile for one head, it's going to compile all the targets. So that makes it slow. So that's the only reason it's there, but just so you know. So for now, it's a shared project, and it's basically, that shared project is referenced in all those projects here. So if I open up UWP, for instance, you can see in the references here that I have my demo1 shared project that is referenced here. So it's basically including the files that are in that shared project in every single project that we're calling heads for each individual platform. So what I can do is just start my application. So we're saying that it's a Windows application. So that is a UWP project that we haven't modified in any way. So this is actually running on Windows directly. And what I can do is just start an application using Control F5. It's deploying the application. And what I've done is a small application that uses the info bar control and number box. So in the number box here, I can just move up and down, and you can see that in the info bar control here, I've set the severity to the value of the number box that's available here. So what that does, it allows you to just basically manipulate your application like that and make it run. So that info bar control is actually pretty nice. It allows you to pop up things at the bottom of the screen, for instance, keep it there, and then you can close it and have it there running. So that's the application that is there. So now what I can do is take that application and, let's say, for instance, go to the web, for instance. So if I change that startup application and I just rebuild that application, and what's happening when I'm building a WebAssembly application is basically we're using the compiler, the C# compiler, to make a small website. So it has all of the things that you would see in a website, so index.html and a few pieces of JavaScript. And then when the application is running, built, and then it gets that website is generated, and it's launching my web browser here. And what you can see here is that the application is actually looking the same. So it's the same thing with the info bar control, and I can just move that up and down, and it's going to change. It's going to change the look and feel of that application, of that info bar there. And to show you that we're actually not inventing anything in many respects, and going forward, it's probably going to be the same, is that we're supporting one of the feature of the number box here is that we can do things like that. If I do expressions inside, and that's something that's available using the accept expression feature that's available as part of the number box, and you can do things like that. It's going to work pretty well. It supports parentheses and things like that. That's pretty nice. We can do all sorts of things. And that control has been ported as is from the WinUI source in C++ over to Uno in C#, and it behaves the same way. So that's one of the cool things about being able to reuse code across platforms. So same thing. We can go over to, let's say, iOS, for instance. I can take that same application, start the build. The application is going to be built for iOS using Xamarin for now, and it's going to be deployed to my emulator that you can see here, and the application is going to run the same way. So it's launching the application here, and you can see that the info bar is available there in the same way. So it's behaving the same way. I can also do the same thing with the expressions. So same behavior. So that's pretty nice. We can see everything that's happening there. So on the other things that people have been asking us recently, it's all about having more controls. It's what can you do with the Uno platform, and one that we've been importing from Windows is the date picker, and that one is huge. And we're talking huge. We're talking 80 files and I think it's something like 10,000 lines of code, and it's very, very large. And that control is available across platform. And to show you that we're actually doing hot reload as well, I've changed that and I have not compiled the application. It's available there. So I can just click here and the application is going to allow me for selecting all this. So I can change the years there and I'm going to get my that. So this is the actual control that comes from Windows. But to also show you that you can reuse the native controls as well, that control has been tailored to run on mobile devices. And when you click here, it actually shows you the native picker by default. You can change it to look like this one if you want, but this is going to show you the native picker instead. So it allows you to select dates using the original one. So that's pretty nice. So that's the date picker, and it allows you to run across platforms. So that's pretty nice. So another control that has been of interest for developers is the Treeview. And the Treeview is something that has been asked a lot, and it's something that is not particularly useful when running on mobile devices, but when you're running on a desktop, Treeview is the way to show hierarchical information. So that's how we're doing it. So I'm just updating this, and so I've just updated this, and you can see that that's the control that's available there, and it just updated, and now you can do all those kind of things. And there are even ways to move things around, like reorder the items inside of the list. That's the kind of things that we've also been added. And that's available as part of the control by itself, and because we ported it over from the WinUI source, it's behaving exactly the same way. So that's one of the pretty cool things. So now I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to go for Tizen. So Tizen, for GTK. So I'm going to select that target, and you can see here that I'm running on GTK. So what happens if I do this? Then if I launch the application using the debugger, you will see that the application is starting up here, and it's running inside of a GTK host. So what happens there is everything's rendered using Skia here. It runs on Windows because GTK is available on Windows as well, but it's the same kind of application that you can see here. So it runs inside of Windows. But it can also run, and I'm going to show you what the output says. So when I look at the output here, the application has been started, and you can see that it's running using off of C, program files, .NET, shared, and others. But now what I can do is using the amazing WSL feature that Microsoft has been adding. And if you take a look at what's been available from yesterday, they added Wayland support, which is the support for UI stuff directly, UI applications running inside of Windows. So Linux applications with UI running on Windows. So take a look at the recent updates that Microsoft have been provided. This is in preview, so that's not what I'm going to show you here, but it's pretty close. And what I'm going to do is using what is called an X server for Windows that I've started here in my taskbar. I can actually start the application, have its UI show up as part of the application running here. So this is my application running there, and you can see that it's the same thing. I have the behavior of my application running from Linux, and to show you that I'm not faking it in any way, you can see that when I'm starting the application, the symbols that are loaded here are the ones that are coming from USR, shared.net, and DLLs. So this is actually running in Linux. And what's even cooler is that you can actually debug your application. If I go to the main page here, and I place a breakpoint here, for instance, when my application starts up, I can debug it like any other application. It's running using WSL. So the implementation of Linux on Windows, but it's behaving like any other application. You have the stack trace, you have the locals, you have the watch, you have anything that's provided as part of .NET Core, .NET 5 debugging. It's available there for you to use and for your application. So it's a pretty nice experience for developing here. So that's the application running here. So another thing that people have been asking us is the use of a tab view. So I'm going to actually restart the application and show you that. So this is the application that's running as part of Linux. So this is running under Linux, and I can probably also show you that if I run the Ubuntu shell and if I show you ps.ax that shows the running processes, it's actually running in TTY1 and running the application using usr.net and my demo using Skia. So another control that has been developed by Microsoft and we ported over is the tab view control. So if I go back to my control here and if I change this to a tab view control, you will be able to see that the application now has changed, and there's a that control that's been available there because I changed it in the UI. So same thing goes for, let's say, if I go back here to my my iOS device, you can see that the behavior is exactly the same here. So that's one of the cool things about developing those applications here, and you have the ability to scroll around and take your code running there. And finally, when we're talking about desktop applications and running larger applications, we're talking about grid view, and that's one of the controls that we actually didn't touch that much. It's coming from the Windows Community Toolkit, and it's the data grid. So if I restart the application here and get that application running again, you can see now that I have my data grid running inside of my Linux application, and that one is not showing up because it has code behind. So if I need to restart the application, but that's the idea. So you have your application running there using the data grid. So that's one of the cool things that are available. And I think it's the same thing if you go to, let's say, WebAssembly, for instance. If I restart my application here, so you can see here that the application is available there, and you get the same results with all the things with moving things around and resizing columns, and so sorting is not available here, but in that sample, but you can add sorting and other things available there. You can see here that I actually data bound the Xbind customer. A customer database that I have in the back. So that's one of the other things that are interesting. So this is a control that comes from the Windows Community Toolkit, but there are a few other controls that are available from the Community Toolkit, like range selector. That's another one that's always of interest. So if I paste that one here, you'll be able to see that range selector is available. So that's a control that's right off the box when you're using the Windows Community Toolkit. So that would be something that you can use very easily there. So I see there's a question. So does WSL debug run works with WSL Docker container? So your app could be tested in pre-built Docker images and with UMP. I think it does. The thing is that I'm pretty sure it is available. So one of the things you can do with pre-built Docker containers is that as long as you can forward your X server to something else, forward your display in your Docker container to an X server, it will work pretty well. So you could debug your application using Visual Studio Code remote debugging feature. And you will be able to debug everything from there. That's one of the pretty cool things that have been adding, that Microsoft has been adding and worked on when debugging there with all the .NET Core and .NET 5, and now upcoming 6 features that are going to be interesting. So now I'm going to show you a few other things that our partners have been developing. The first one is Syncfusion. So Syncfusion has been developing a set of controls that are a part of their charts offering. So let's say, for instance, you have here a set of bar charts, and you have a donut chart here that where you can click on items and see the content, and a few other things like that. So that's a pretty nice. That's a pretty nice a set of features that are available there. That's one of the things that you can see with Syncfusion. So you got pie charts and axes, and you can even click on items there. So that's a pretty nice set of controls. And we also have our friends at Infragistics that have been providing a set of other controls, and that one is pretty interesting. So it's a chart that you can see here, for which I can move on to, which shows the different features that are the different color components that are available when selecting a control there. When I'm moving my cursor over the image. So if I go to the red here, you will see that the red component is up top. If I go to the green here, you can see that the green component is up top. So that's one of the things that the Infragistics developers have been working on to get on Uno. And that's going to be that's something that they really want feedback on. So if you want to try that on to your applications, just let them know, and that's going to be pretty interesting to see. So that's for the demos, specifically when running applications running there. I can actually show you a few other things. So we have an application. So if you want to get started and running your applications, you can go to the Channel 9 application. So this is an application that allows you to see how developing a small application is of interest. It shows you all the small things that you can do. You can even try it live. If you click here, you can see that application running there. It allows you to see the videos that are running from Channel 9. It's a small application that shows you how to develop features using Uno across platform, and like having a video player and a few other things like lists and other things that are available for developing on Uno. So that's that. And I was talking about WebAssembly a bit earlier. So I've shown you a few different applications running on Linux, on WebAssembly. So that is one. And to show you that we're actually not doing anything when running, it's an actual SPA application. That application is actually not doing anything. So when I'm clicking here to network, you can see that you will be able to see that nothing happens when I'm doing anything locally. So it's not going back to the server, it's not coming back again, and things like that. So the application is completely local, and so that means that if you have privacy in mind, that's the kind of things that are very interesting. Another thing that is of interest when looking at application running on the web here is all about having taking a look at what the UI looks like. So if you inspect the application, you will be able to see all the elements and div elements and others that are composing the application. Like for instance, if I click here, you can see that I have a P element, but that's inside that has buttons, a few others. So you can inspect the application and take a look at how it is rendered. So now one of the things that we're doing with WebAssembly. So I was told that the audience in the .next conference is quite technical and likes low level stuff. So I'm going to show you one thing that I've been personally loving to do and trying to explain how that works. So this application is, I'm calling that a tech soup, but the idea is it's an application that contains a few things. The first one is the Roslyn Compiler. So what you see here is C# code. So when I click on that button, what happens is that code is compiled down to an assembly in memory. So I'm actually going to show you the network stuff so you actually see that nothing goes out. So when I click the execute button here, that code is going to be compiled by Roslyn. So the actual Roslyn compiler that's part of the standard NuGet things that are available as we're not modifying anything. And when you click the execute button, it's going to compile that. So it's a bit slower because I opened the debugger tooling here. But you can see that it got the compilation, it emitted an assembly, it loaded the assembly and found that method here that's async. And the other cool thing there, and you can see here that nothing went out to the network, so it's completely local, and that's pretty amazing. And that code is actually using Entity Framework So you can see here a database that's created, and it's using Save Database Engine and things like that. And it's manipulating a database that's running using SQLite inside of the browser, the actual SQLite, so not an emulated version of JavaScript. It's the actual SQLite compiled down to WebAssembly and available as part of the browser. So it's running inside of the browser directly. And if I click it again, let's say if I change something here, so let's say I do a modification here and I click execute again, you will see that the database has been modified using the code that I changed here, and that updates that here. So that demo is not particularly useful in terms of feature set, but the point of this application is about saying that anything that's part of that .NET Standard 2 or .NET 5 that actually can run in a browser without being modified. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty nice that we can do all those things inside of an application. And I've been manipulating this this code as when during my stream. So I live stream very frequently, and I'm actually going to show you. It's a small application that I'm doing every Tuesday, and it's an application that uses a few things, and specifically uses Roslyn, and it's what I'm calling a Skia Sharp Fiddle. And that application is basically taking that code, that source code here, and compiling that to run and be executed every time there's something that changes. So if I take, for instance, the sweep gradient here, if I compile that, I can have my sweep gradient. I'm going to show you that it actually resizes. So if I do, for instance, 0.2 instead, maybe not 0.2, let's say 4 instead. You can see that it moved away. And if I change this, then it resizes properly. And if it goes down to being able to, so it's all local inside of the browser. And if it goes down to, even if you make an error instead of the C#, you're going to get syntax highlighting for what's happening in your application. And you can even see all those details here. So you can go pretty far when developing an application using .NET and using Uno and using WebAssembly inside of your browser. And it's quite amazing if you think about it. It's technologies that have been there for a very long time that are running in your browser without anything specific that needs to be there, and it's mind-blowing to say the least. So that's my last demo that I wanted to show you. I'm going to go back quickly to my slides to talk to you about the rest of what's happening in the Uno space. So that was the demos. So we're having it raw. If you've been watching that presentation, and if you want a chance to win an introduction to the Uno platform on Udemy, you let us know. You go to the platform.uno/prize draw, and you get that chance to win that introduction to Uno platform course. So that's about it for my presentation. So if you want to try out the Uno platform, you can go to Uno platform. You got a nice button at the top that allows you to go to the getting started. You can talk to us on Discord and on the Uno platform channel, on the UWP community channel, but also on the .NET Evolution channel. You can report issues if you're trying out everything there using GitHub/Uno platform. And if you want to develop applications, you also have Microsoft App Consult because your applications are WinUI applications. So if you want to develop as well for Windows, that's definitely possible. So Microsoft is here to help and to get access to all this. So let us know if you want that. So info@platform.uno. So thank you very much for listening. And if you have questions, I'm all ears.
That was a great talk. It was really a pleasure to hear it from you. So, okay, my question is quite obvious after any talk of this kind. So you showed plenty of great cases when to use the framework. So question is obvious. When not to use it?
When not to use it?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's all about your scenarios. So depending on where you're coming from, depending on the target that you want to use. Let's say, for instance, if you have a code base that's completely on iOS, you may not want to use it. Or if you have, let's say, people that are using completely JavaScript and they don't want to do any C#, then you may not want to use it. That's one of the things. So, and one of the reasons we've been developing the Uno platform that way is provide flexibility over being able to use different targets. So, let's say if you want to develop something like a Bitcoin miner screen that's on your little LCD screen that displays something, you can use the Skia rendering engine. And that Skia rendering engine is pretty useful when you're doing things like very small details or very custom drawing. But if you want to do accessibility, that's not something that you will be able to do. So it's about scenarios. If you want to do WebAssembly and you have a more of a web background, maybe going for Blazor is something that may be of interest. It's all about where you're coming from. Now, if you want to target the breadth of all those targets, if you want to use the breadth of all those targets, let's say WebAssembly specifically, and you're having a XAML and C# experience, Uno kind of comes at kind of good choice, I would say, for developing your applications.
Okay. And by the way, I could ask the same question, but a bit wider. I mean, from a bit different perspective.
Yes.
So I was doing some talk, like comparing different cross-platform frameworks, and it's always like, you show in some framework, and here's advantages, here's disadvantages. What disadvantages would you point in case of Uno?
I mean, in terms of using Uno? Yeah, well, no, okay. So disadvantage, it's always difficult for and promoting the platform, but the disadvantage would be, let's say, if you're more familiar with another technology, going over to XAML could be something that may block you. Now, we're looking at being able to let's say make XAML optional with a way to develop applications using completely C#. People have been asking for that quite a bit, and it's something that we're not there yet, but it's something that has been of interest. If you have, if some of the listeners here have an interest into looking at that C# first development style, just let us know. Open an issue or take a look at the issues that have been open on Uno. But that's something that we're all ears for people that want to do development that way.
Okay. And for example, in terms of performance, what would you say about the framework? So is it like compared to other frameworks? I don't know, maybe compared to WPF, which is not cross-platform, but still, how you would rate Uno in terms of performance?
It's always difficult to make a comparison that way. But if I trying it out, we've been spending a lot on performance, low level. And one of the advantages that we have in terms of when comparing to WPF is that we're able to use all the latest features of C#, namely all the ref struct and all the low-level memory, unsafe stuff that the .NET team has been able to provide. So for some of the very specific scenarios that are similar with what WPF is able to provide, we're faster. Now, the thing is that when we're running on iOS and Android and others, we're doing things differently. So the performance characteristic may be faster in some cases, slower on those, on others. On WebAssembly, it's very different. WebAssembly is very new. You may observe in some cases, in some of our demo applications, that some scenarios may be slower, and that's something that we're working on with Microsoft to make that a lot faster, and opening up issues on the browser side to make sure that everything goes a lot faster. If you find performance issues, let us know. That's something that we're eager to find for performance scenarios, and to report that to Microsoft and help to get that running a lot faster. So it really depends on the target that you're running on. And one thing that we know at this point is that when you're running on Linux, we're not using hardware acceleration yet. It's something that we're looking at adding very soon so that it goes a lot faster.
Okay, thanks for the answer. And for example, usual think about any person who developing such stuff like this, it's always have, I don't know, plenty of hacks. So there's always some shorthands and so on. So Could you tell, I don't know, any interesting about internals of the framework, some interesting solutions? You know what I mean by interesting?
Yeah, of course. I mean, interesting solution. We've been Uno has been a re-implementation of the UWP framework and WinUI framework. So we had to do things, and workarounds and try to guess the behaviors in many ways. And that's something that we've been doing. The next version of Uno is going to be integrating the grid, an updated version of the grid control. And the grid control that we implemented was just about guessing what Microsoft was doing, and we made it too complex, to say the least. And a newer version is going to be a lot faster and a lot simpler. And we have a few other things, like, for instance, if you're running on iOS and Android, what you will see is that dependency object is not a class. So that's the base class for every UI element that's in WPF and WinUI. But in iOS, the dependency is not a class; it's an interface, and we're using a source generator. Actually, we had a source generation for about 5 years now, using Roslyn. So it's been introduced in C# 9, but we had that way back because of the fact that we needed that for Uno. We're generating a lot of stuff in Uno. And that is about source generation. If you want to take a look at that, that's one of the cool hacks that we're doing and cool features that are inside. It's actually, that source generation feature is available and has more features that are available in C# 9 at this point. Namely, the fact that we can have generators that can interact with each other, which Roslyn, the current Roslyn implementation on C# 9 doesn't do. So it's called Uno.source generation tasks, if you're taking a look at.
Okay, so there's another question from Konstantin. It's about the DSL language. So why you chose XAML as primary DSL? Why not C# internal DSLs? C# is not friendly for DSLs as Kotlin or Groovy, or maybe F#, just for example. But still should be possible to do interesting things with generators.
So it's actually generated. That's the good thing. So what we're doing when we're compiling, when you're taking a C# application, I can actually probably show you that. I don't know if it's possible for the yeah, there you go. So let's take a look at the demo application that I had here. So let's take the iOS application, for instance. If I open this and I go to the object folder, you're going to see that for the iOS simulator, I have a folder that's called G here, and that has the conversion of that XAML here into C#. So all that is C#. So it's not that much human readable C#, if you will, but it's made to be fast. It's made to be explicitly usable for the compiler. So there are tweaks that we're making to the generated code so that it compiles faster and runs faster on devices. So we're using XAML as a DSL because it's the compatibility DSL for running directly on what Microsoft is providing already and compatible with WPF and Silverlight. But underneath, we're converting that XAML down to C#, and that C# is compiled into your application. So we're not using this. We're not using this directly.
Okay. And by the way, just
I hope that explains.
Yeah, just question from my side. So there was mentioned other languages that a bit better for DSLs. So I'm personally using F# a lot. So have you ever thought about F# APIs? Because I've seen good API for...
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yes, we have. So I can actually show you that one. And actually, it's a Russian compatriot of yours that has actually been doing this. We've been doing this using, let me find that one out. It's Uno platform. If you go to, I think it's Fabulous, if I remember correctly. So you have Uno Fabulous.
Oh yeah,
there it is. So it's a rough port. It's not something that we're supporting completely at this point. But some developers have been developing applications using this, and so they have Fabulous, and we had I think we have Elmish as well, proof of concept for Elmish, if I remember correctly. So that's the kind of things that you can take a look at. And yes, definitely other languages is something that that is of interest. And F# is supported out of the box in some ways. You can develop class libraries using F#. The UI part of it, depending on the targets, you can use Fabulous is one of the available targets for that.
Yeah, okay. So Konstantin specified that he thought about something like Jetpack Compose from the brain. So yeah. But actually, I guess that's what you mentioned previously when you said that you have plans about C# DSL and so on. So I guess something close.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is about C# DSLs, and we've been investigating that for quite a while, actually. The problem is that the C# language itself doesn't land well in some cases with defining applications that way. So F# is more concise. You don't have brackets. You have a lot more type inference that makes a lot of sense when doing that kind of things, and that speaks. But C# is not well suited for that yet. And I hope that with all the things that Microsoft is doing with declarative C# and others, that we'll see things happening for the let's say C# 10, maybe, I don't know exactly, but maybe there's going to be something that's going to help there. So we're on the lookout for sure, but things need to improve a little bit before we get there.
So yeah, I guess that's a nice time to move to the other slot. And if you have any other questions, we'll move to discussion zone soon. And now, Andre, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for that awesome talk. To be honest, I have never tried.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry, I was muted. So thank you very much for the awesome talk. To be honest, I have never tried on a platform before, but currently I have a strong temptation to try it in my next pet project. So thanks for that.
Excellent.
And I want to invite you and all the people in the audience who have any question about cross-platform user interface, frameworks, whatsoever, or on a platform specifically, to the discussion zone where you can discuss any topics you like. Thanks again.